I didn't say a word when the HOA president accused me of trespassing on what she called community property. She jabbed a finger toward the half-finished houses behind her like an angry tour guide. I didn't argue, didn't correct her, didn't point out that the ground she stood on was mine in a way she couldn't begin to imagine. I just slid the folder across the conference room table, the one containing the original Department of Interior land patent and 2 federal reclamation orders. Her lawyer picked it up with a smirk that died halfway through the first page. The man actually went pale. I remember thinking he looked like someone who just realized the floor beneath him wasn't a floor at all, just a painted sheet of paper laid over a hole. The room went very quiet after that. Quiet in a way that only comes when people finally understand just how badly they've miscalculated. But that wasn't where the story really started. It started long before the subdivision, before the HOA formed like a mold colony on damp drywall, before the meetings and the threats and the absurd fines. The truth is, I moved out here because I was tired. Not burnout, not defeated, just tired in the way people get after too many years doing things that mattered to everyone else except them. My grandfather left me 80 acres outside town, a stretch of land that didn't look like much to anyone passing through, but felt like the only place I could breathe. The cabin was old. The logs were gray and soft in some places, the roof sagged in a way that made it look apologetic, but it was ours. His hands built it. My childhood summers were spent running through its fields, and every memory I kept tucked behind my ribs seemed to lead back to that place. I planned to fix it up, not into anything fancy, just sturdy enough to last another generation or 2. I thought I'd have quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, afternoons spent clearing deadfall, maybe even coaxing a garden to life if I could keep the deer out. That was all I wanted. The hum of crickets, the clean smell of pine sap, the particular peace that comes from land that doesn't ask anything from you except respect. I wasn't trying to start a war with an HOA. At that point, I didn't even know one existed. The first sign of trouble came taped crookedly to my workshop door, a violation notice. At first, I assumed it had blown over from somewhere else. The nearest houses were half a mile away, and none of them had been there when I was a kid. The notice scolded me, actually scolded me, for unauthorized roof repair. I remember staring at it, trying to figure out what kind of oversight body imagined they had dominion over my land. My roof wasn't visible from any road. The cabin wasn't part of any subdivision. It wasn't even on the same zoning map. I set the notice aside, thinking it was a clerical error. But a week later, another bright orange envelope appeared, this time warning me about non-compliant driveway materials. They meant the gravel, my gravel, on a driveway that had existed longer than the subdivision by at least 40 years. It was absurd in a way that didn't even make me angry at first. It just felt surreal, like watching a stranger lecture a tree about municipal tax codes. I tried to sort it out politely. I wrote the HOA board, explaining that they must have the wrong parcel, that my land wasn't under their authority, that their boundaries ended half a mile short of my fence line. The email I got back was astonishingly smug. Something about community alignment standards and mandatory participation for adjacent properties. I called the number listed at the bottom. They didn't answer. I left a message. They didn't return it. Then the fines started to escalate. $50 for the roof, $100 for the driveway, $200 for failure to maintain landscaping. I didn't know whether to laugh or look for hidden cameras. I wrote again, this time attaching screenshots of the county site displaying the parcel divisions, my deed, and the jurisdictional map. Their reply was 2 lines long. All properties within visual influence of the community are required to comply. Further refusal will result in legal action. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger, just a kind of cold, tightening focus I hadn't felt in years. It reminded me of the feeling I got when solving mechanical problems at my old job, The quiet calculation that settles in when you realize the system is broken and no one else sees it yet. I stopped writing emails. I stopped trying to be reasonable. I started reading. I went to the county clerk's office and pulled every document related to my land: survey maps, title transfers, water rights, zoning ordinances, historical records. I even dug out the old military reclamation paperwork my grandfather kept in a metal box under his bed, the one I used to think was full of fishing lures. I learned more about property law in 3 weeks than most realtors pick up in a lifetime. And the deeper I went, the more obvious it became the HOA had built their precious subdivision partially over land they didn't own. Not my house site, but the section farther down, the flat stretch near the creek. Land that had been left intentionally undeveloped due to a decades-old easement the HOA clearly never bothered to read. Meanwhile, things around me got tense. Neighbors who used to wave at me stopped making eye contact. Construction crews blocked the old access road I'd used since childhood. One worker told me the HOA president claimed I was dangerous and uncooperative. My partner started worrying I'd get arrested for trying to drive onto my own property. Nights got longer. I read case law until my eyes burned, highlighted statutes, cross-referenced land use codes, organized everything into a binder thick enough to double as a weapon. And that's when I found it. The part of the patent most people never look at. The clause stating that any unauthorized development on the reclaimed section reverted ownership rights exclusively to the patent holder if contested. Not the government, not the county, me. It meant that every fence post, every poured foundation, every single one of the 96 houses the HOA proudly advertised as Phase 2 expansion was sitting on land that legally defaulted back to me the moment I filed a reclamation order. All I had to do was let him finish the construction and then pull the paperwork. So I waited. I kept quiet. I paid none of the fines. I let the HOA escalate, threaten, bluster. I let them pour concrete and lay asphalt and string utilities across land whose title they had never truly bothered to trace. I let them believe they had power over me. In the end, their arrogance did more work on my behalf than any bulldozer could have. When construction wrapped, when the marketing flyers went out, when they hosted their little ribbon-cutting ceremony with folding chairs and a food truck, I filed the reclamation order with the federal office that still maintained authority over the original patent. The clerk stamped it with a thud that sounded like the closing of a vault door. Which brings the story back to that conference room. The HOA president, red-faced and loud. Their lawyer flipping pages faster the further he read. The board members shifting in their seats, realizing that not only did they have no claim over my land, they had built an entire neighborhood on a foundation of legal quicksand. I didn't have to raise my voice, didn't have to threaten anything. All I did was present the paperwork, answer a few questions, and watch the quiet unraveling of a structure built on arrogance and ignorance. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was slow, bureaucratic, and devastating in a way that didn't require any cruelty from me. First, the president resigned. Then the board dissolved. Then the county stepped in, furious to discover the HOA had forged compliance documents to begin construction. Lawsuits bloomed like weeds. Developers vanished. Banks tried to untangle mortgage lines from land that no longer legally belonged to the buyers. I didn't take anyone's house. I simply declined to bail out the people who refused to acknowledge my ownership in the first place. Eventually, the subdivision went silent. Some buyers moved away. Others negotiated new easements with me, and I was fair, more fair than the HOA ever was. Life got quiet again. Neighbors began waving once more, cautiously at first, then with genuine warmth. People learned my name. I rebuilt the cabin roof in peace. Now, when I drive down the main road that cuts through what used to be the HOA's proudest achievement, the few remaining board members either lift the hand to wave or turn away as if sunlight stings. Either reaction is fine by me. The land is calm again. The air feels lighter. And every time I walk the stretch of earth they once claimed jurisdiction over, I'm reminded that silence and patience are far more effective than shouting could ever be.